First contact deception, anomaly detected, High Commander Zirex. The sensor officer's voice quavered slightly as her three eyes blinked in rapid succession at the holographic display. High Commander Zirex of the Galactic Hegemony's exploration fleet didn't bother looking up from his command console. The Tarlaxian veteran had spent over 4 centuries mapping this quadrant, and these alerts usually amounted to nothing more than space debris or natural phenomena. Classification, he asked, mandibles clicking impatiently. That's the issue, sir. It doesn't match anything in our database. Now Zirex raised his gaze. The central view screen showed a vessel unlike any he'd encountered in his long service to the Hegemony. It was relatively small, perhaps 1/5 the size of his command cruiser, but possessed a distinctly aggressive silhouette. Its hull was matte black, absorbing rather than reflecting sensor waves, with angular protrusions that seemed designed specifically to defeat scanning technology. Most concerning were the unmistakable weapon ports positioned strategically across its hull. Magnification, Zirex ordered, rising from his command chair. The image zoomed in, revealing intricate details of the unknown vessel. The bridge fell silent as the crew, a mixture of Tarlaxians like himself and several allied species, stared at the view screen with expressions ranging from curiosity to unmistakable concern. Communications, hail that vessel, Zirex commanded, adjusting his ceremonial collar. Lieutenant Vex, a blue-skinned Meridian with 6 manipulator limbs, worked her console with practiced efficiency. No response, High Commander. I'm transmitting on all standard frequencies. Tactical assessment, Zirex ordered, turning to his weapons officer. Kradak, a reptilian Varaxian whose species was renowned throughout the galaxy for their military expertise, growled low in her throat. Those are weapons emplacements, sir. Primitive by our standards, but the energy signatures suggest significant destructive capability. The vessel's hull composition is preventing detailed internal scans. An armed ship in hegemony space? That's a direct violation of treaty laws. First Officer Tremlar noted, her facial tentacles rippling with agitation. Sir, the sensor officer called out, excitement replacing her earlier uncertainty. A cross-reference with historical archives. The design matches technology from Sol system. It appears to be human. A collective murmur squawked across the bridge. Humans, the bipedal mammals from the backwater planet Earth. The hegemony had cattle of them nearly 70 cycles ago, deemed them pre-spaceflight primitives, and placed their system under standard observation. Contact was forbidden until they achieved faster-than-light capability, which hegemony scientists had estimated would take at least another 3 centuries. That's impossible, Zirex stated flatly. They were barely venturing beyond their moon when we last assessed them. Sir, they're hailing us, Lieutenant Vex announced. Zirex straightened his uniform and nodded. On screen, the holographic display flickered and a human face appeared. Zirex had studied xenobiology extensively and recognized the pale skin, dark facial hair, and unsettlingly small number of eyes as characteristic of the species. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth vessel Vanguard, the human said, speaking perfect galactic standard. Requesting permission to proceed through your territory. Zirex struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. This is High Commander Zirex of the Galactic Hegemony Exploration Fleet. Your presence here is unauthorized. Humans have not been granted interstellar travel rights, and your vessel appears to be armed, which violates numerous hegemony statutes. The human smiled, an expression Zirex recognized as potentially friendly, but which contained something predatory that set his warning appendages twitching. With respect, Commander, Chen replied smoothly, we didn't ask for permission to explore space. As for the weapons, he shrugged. Let's just say the galaxy can be a dangerous place for newcomers. Their weapon systems just went active, sir, Kradak whispered urgently. Not targeting us yet, but fully powered. Zirex kept his external demeanor calm, but internally his digestive sacs twisted with tension. Captain Chen, I must insist you power down your weapons immediately. The hegemony does not respond well to threats. Neither do humans, Commander, Chen replied without hesitation. Consider our weapons a precaution, not a threat. We've been observing your hegemony for some time. While we appreciate the benevolent advanced civilization routine, we've noticed you tend to be more respectful of species that can defend themselves. Sir, the sensor officer interrupted urgently. I'm detecting energy fluctuations in their propulsion system. It's unlike anything in our database, some form of spatial manipulation technology. Zirex studied the readings and felt his blood temperature drop several degrees. The human ship was using propulsion technology that should be centuries beyond their capability. How did you achieve faster-than-light travel? Zirex demanded, abandoning diplomatic protocol. Our assessments indicated your species was at least 3 centuries from such technology. Captain Chen laughed, the sound somehow both melodious and unsettling. Commander, has it occurred to you that perhaps we didn't want you to know our true capabilities? Your observation probes were detected the moment they entered our solar system. We've been feeding them exactly what we wanted you to see. The implications sent a tremor through Zirex's secondary spine. If the humans had detected and manipulated hegemony surveillance, what else might they be capable of? Sir, Lieutenant Vex called out, her voice tight with concern. 2 more vessels just emerged from FTL. Same configuration, same armaments. 3 ships is hardly an invasion force, Zirex noted. They'll be signaled Krodak to quietly bring their defensive systems to standby. True, Captain Chen agreed, his expression relaxed. Consider this a diplomatic mission with teeth. With teeth. Zirex's mandibles clicked in agitation. The hegemony does not respond to intimidation, Captain. And humans don't respond well to being treated like lab specimens or primitive curiosities, Chen countered. We're here to establish our place in the galactic community, Commander as equals, not as subjects. Zirex felt the weight of this historic moment. First contact situations were delicate enough without the complications of unexpected technological advancement and military posturing. His decisions now could potentially shape hegemony-human relations for generations. Perhaps we should discuss this further, he offered. Would you and a small delegation be willing to come aboard my vessel? I guarantee your safety under the hegemony's first contact protocols. That's very kind, Chen replied, but I have a counter-proposal. Why don't you join us on the Vanguard? Our chef has prepared what we believe would be compatible refreshments for Tarlaxian physiology. Before Zirex could respond, a new alert sounded. A sensor officer checked her console and looked up with all 3 eyes wide in shock. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from hegemony outposts throughout the sector. Human vessels have been detected at 34 different locations simultaneously. They're everywhere. Zirex stared at Captain Chen's composed face on the screen. This isn't just about safe passage, is it? As I said, Commander, we're establishing our place, Chen replied calmly. Don't worry, we're not looking for conflict, but we are done hiding. The Hegemony Council will never accept this show of force, Zirex warned. Ken's expression softened slightly. It's not a show of force, Commander. It's a declaration of existence. Your hegemony has categorized and controlled thousands of species across the galaxy, deciding their fate based on your own criteria. We're simply refusing to be categorized. First Officer Tremlar approached Zirex with a data tablet. Sir, intelligence reports suggest the humans may have been acquiring hegemony technology over the past several decades. There are records of unexplained losses of research vessels near their solar system. You've been stealing our technology, Zirex accused, mandibles clicking in outrage. Captain Chen's smile widened. Commander, stealing is such an ugly word. We prefer to think of it as accelerated technology transfer. And to be fair, you were the ones who decided to park your fancy ships near our primitive planet. This is an outrage. If hegemony will. Will what? Chen interrupted, his friendly demeanor suddenly replaced with steel. Start a war with a species you know almost nothing about. A species that managed to reverse engineer your technology while you weren't looking. That would be unwise, Commander. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Zirex realized with growing alarm that the hegemony had catastrophically underestimated this species, their intelligence, their adaptability, their cunning, all dismissed because of their relatively recent evolution and apparent technological limitations. What do you want? Zirex finally asked. Ken's expression softened again. As I said, recognition, respect, and yes, trade agreements would be nice. We have much to offer, Commander. Humanity is quite innovative. And if we refuse, we're not going anywhere, Chen said simply. We spent the last 70 years preparing for this moment. We know more about your hegemony than you'd be comfortable with. We've mapped your territories, studied your strengths and weaknesses. We don't want conflict, but we are prepared for it. Zirex felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. His options were limited, his position uncomfortable. But perhaps there was still a diplomatic solution. I will convey your message to the Council, he said carefully. But I must warn you, Captain Chen. Threats against the hegemony rarely end well for those making them. This isn't a threat, Commander, Chen replied with that unsettling smile. It's simply a new reality. The galaxy just got a little more interesting. He paused. Now about that meeting, our chef really has gone to considerable trouble. Zirex looked around at his bridge crew, saw the mixture of fear and fascination in their expressions, and made his decision. Very well, Captain. I accept your invitation for the sake of peaceful relations. Excellent. Chen's face brightened. We'll send coordinates for docking. And Commander, you might want to bring an open mind. Humans are full of surprises. As the transmission ended, Zirex turned to his stunned crew. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered, his voice deliberately steady, and send an encrypted priority message to the Council. It seems the galaxy has become considerably more complicated. The ultimatum. 3 standard months after High Commander Zirex's encounter with the Vanguard, the Hegemony Council chamber on Tarlex Prime was in an uproar. Representatives from all 87 member species filled the vast circular hall, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages, tones, and vocal patterns. High Counselor Vrax, eldest of the Tarlaxian elders, slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times. A sound reverberated through the chamber, gradually silencing the assembled representatives. "Order," he commanded, his ancient voice carrying surprising power. "This council will have order." As the chamber quieted, Vrax gestured toward the central platform where High Commander Zirex stood at attention, flanked by his senior officers. "High Commander, you have presented your report on the human emergence. The council has reviewed it, along with subsequent intelligence. Now we require your assessment. What threat do these humans pose to hegemony stability?" Zirex stepped forward, conscious of the thousands of eyes, sensory stalks, and perception organs focused on him. During his 3 months since first contact, he had met with human representatives multiple times, toured their vessels, and even visited Earth itself. What he had discovered had profoundly unsettled him. "High Counselor, esteemed representatives, the human situation is unprecedented. While they possess only a fraction of our territorial reach and numerical strength, their technological advancement rate is unlike anything in our historical records. They have progressed from primitive chemical rockets to advanced spatial manipulation drives in less than a century, a development curve that should be biologically impossible." Murmurs swept through the chamber. A Varaxian representative rose from her seat. "Explain how they achieved this," she demanded, reptilian scales shifting colors with her agitation. "2 factors appear responsible," Zirex replied. "First, humans possess extraordinary cognitive adaptability. They assimilate and improve upon new concepts at rates that defy our xenopsychological models. Second," he hesitated, knowing the reaction his next words would provoke, "they have been systematically acquiring and reverse engineering hegemony technology for decades." The chamber erupted again. This time, High Counselor Vrax required 5 strikes of his staff to restore order. "Are you suggesting," he asked, voice dangerously quiet, "that a pre-spaceflight species managed to capture our vessels and decipher technologies that took the combined intelligence of the hegemony millennia to develop?" "Yes, High Counselor," Zirex confirmed. "Human military records, which they provided voluntarily during negotiations, indicate they recovered their first hegemony craft approximately 65 cycles ago. They have since captured an estimated 27 hegemony vessels of various classes." "Impossible," shouted a Meridian representative. "Our ships are programmed to self-destruct if compromised." "The humans develop methods to prevent those protocols from activating," Zirex explained. "They are particularly adept at identifying and exploiting system vulnerabilities. Furthermore, they have salvaged and studied debris from vessels that did self-destruct, gleaning considerable insight even from fragments." High Counselor Vrax stroked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And now these humans demand recognition as equals, despite their infancy as a species." "Not just recognition," Zirex corrected. "They demand full membership status in the hegemony, unrestricted travel rights, and a seat on this council." The chamber fell silent, not from shock, but from outrage so profound it momentarily robbed the representatives of speech. A Calarian elder, her crystalline form shimmering with indignation, finally broke the silence. "And if we refuse these preposterous demands?" Zirex squared his shoulders. "Then we face a different problem. The humans have formed alliances with several species traditionally marginalized by the hegemony, notably the Vargans, Tellarites, and most concerning, the Cryer Collective." That revelation sent a wave of genuine alarm through the chamber. The Cryer Collective had rebelled against hegemony authority 2 centuries earlier, resulting in a protracted and bloody conflict. These alliances were formed in secret over the past 30 years, as Zirex continued. Human diplomats approached species with grievances against the hegemony, offering technological exchange and mutual defense pacts. Together, they have established what they call the Independent Systems Alliance. While still numerically inferior to hegemony forces, their combined technological capability is concerning. The Varaxian representative leaned forward. "Are you suggesting these primitives and malcontents pose a genuine military threat to the hegemony?" "I am suggesting," Zirex replied carefully, "that conflict with this alliance would result in casualties on a scale the hegemony has not experienced in 5,000 years. Furthermore, our intelligence indicates their defensive preparations are extensive." High Counselor Vrax made a dismissive gesture. "Surely our numerical advantage would prevail." "That is not certain," High Counselor said in a voice. Director Selna of Hegemony Military Intelligence stepped onto the platform, her 4 arms clutching data tablets. "Our analysis suggests that human tactics and technology combined with their allies' resources create significant strategic challenges. They have established what they call defense in depth-layered fortifications throughout their territories that would make conventional invasion extremely costly. Selna activated a holographic display showing human territory and surrounding sectors. Additionally, they have deployed an interconnected network of automated defense platforms using technology we cannot easily counter. Most concerning, she highlighted several points on the map. They have positioned weapons of planetary destruction near key hegemony worlds. Gasps and hisses fill the chamber. Such weapons have been banned by the hegemony for millennia. These humans would resort to such barbarism. High Counselor Vrax asked, genuine shock in his voice. They call it mutually assured destruction, Zirex explained. It was their primary defense strategy during their pre-spaceflight development. They're simply applying the same principle on a galactic scale. The chamber descended into anxious discussion. Zirex watched the representatives' reactions, noting the shift from outrage to genuine concern. High Counselor Vrax raised his staff for silence once more. What are our options, High Commander? 3 paths lie before us, Zirex replied. First, we can reject their demands and prepare for potential conflict. Our military advantage remains significant, but casualties would be substantial and victory is not guaranteed. Second, we could negotiate a compromise, perhaps offering associate status with limited rights, gradually integrating them into hegemony structures as they demonstrate their commitment to our principles. And the third option, Vrax prompted. Full acceptance of their terms, Zirex said quietly. Recognize humans and their allies as equals, grant them representation, and reorient hegemony policy toward genuine cooperation rather than hierarchical control. The chamber erupted in protests. Vrax allowed the outburst to continue for several moments before restoring order. Your recommendation, High Commander, he asked. Zirex had known this moment would come. His answer would likely end his career, but after witnessing humanity's capabilities firsthand, he could not in good conscience recommend any other course. I'd recommend the third option, High Counselor. Full acceptance. The uproar was deafening. Representatives shouted accusations of treason and cowardice. Vrax required multiple strikes of his staff to quiet the chamber. Explain yourself, Zirex, he demanded, deliberately omitting the commander's title. The hegemony has survived for 10,000 years by adapting to new realities, Zirex responded, unintimidated. This is such a moment. The humans and their allies possess technologies and tactical approaches we have not encountered before. More importantly, they offer something that hegemony has lacked for millennia, innovation. He gestured toward the assembled representatives. When was the last time any hegemony species developed a truly revolutionary technology? We have refined, improved, and expanded upon our existing knowledge base, but genuine innovation has become increasingly rare. Zirex activated his own holographic display showing images of Earth and human colonies. The humans call it thinking outside the box, approaching problems from entirely new perspectives. It is their defining characteristic and their greatest strength. They question everything, challenge established wisdom, and pursue possibilities others dismiss as impossible. They also appear to embrace chaos and conflict, objected a Meridian representative. They embrace change, Zirex corrected, which we have come to fear. The hegemony's obsession with stability has gradually transformed into stagnation. The humans and their allies can revitalize our civilization if we have the wisdom to welcome rather than suppress them. High Counselor Vrax studied Zirex thoughtfully. You sound impressed by these humans, High Commander. I am, High Counselor. Impressed and concerned. They represent both our greatest opportunity and our greatest challenge in 5,000 years. How we respond now will determine the hegemony's future for millennia to come. Vrax conferred briefly with the other council elders before addressing the chamber again. This matter requires deeper consideration. We will recess for 3 days to review all intelligence and consult with our respective governments. As the representatives began filing out, Vrax approached Zirex privately. You have given us much to consider, High Commander, but I wonder, have these humans somehow influenced your thinking? Your advocacy for their position seems uncharacteristically passionate. Zirex met the ancient Tarlaxian's gaze steadily. Not influenced, High Counselor, educated. They show me possibilities I had never considered. They asked questions I had never thought to ask. Most importantly, they demonstrated that our assumption of superiority was just that, an assumption, not a universal truth. Vrax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, a dangerous perspective for a hegemony commander. Perhaps, Zirex acknowledged, but ignoring reality because it challenges our preconceptions would be far more dangerous. As Vrax departed, First Officer Trenlar approached Zirex. That went as well as could be expected, sir. The Council fears change, Zirex replied. They always have. But the humans aren't giving them a choice. Change is coming whether the hegemony embraces it or not. And if they choose conflict, Trenlar asked quietly. Zirex watched the representatives leaving the chamber, their postures and movements reflecting their agitation. Then the hegemony as we know it will end. Not immediately, perhaps not even in our lifetime, but eventually. The humans have a saying, adapt or die. The hegemony has reached that crossroads. You actually believe these humans and their ragtag allies could defeat us? Trenlar sounded skeptical. Not through conventional warfare, Zirex clarified, but they don't think conventionally. That's what the Council fails to understand. The humans won't fight the war we expect. They'll fight a war we cannot anticipate. And in that lies our greatest vulnerability. As they exited the Council chamber, Zirex's communication implant signaled an incoming message on a private frequency he had established with Captain Chen. How did the Council react? Chen's voice asked without preamble. Exactly as you predicted, Zirex replied. Initial outrage followed by strategic reassessment when confronted with the Defense Network data. They're deliberating now. And your recommendation? Also as discussed, though it may have cost me my commission. Chen's laugh came through clearly, a small price for helping reshape the galaxy, wouldn't you say? Zirex found himself agreeing despite the radical nature of that thought. The Council reconvenes in 3 days for their decision. They'll make the right choice, Chen said confidently, either by wisdom or necessity. As Zirex ended the communication, he reflected on how profoundly his perspective had shifted since that first encounter with the Vanguard. He had begun as a loyal hegemony commander, secure in his civilization's superiority. Now he found himself advocating for the greatest transformation in hegemony history because of a species that, according to all traditional metrics, should still be confined to their home planet. The humans had a term for it, paradigm shift. The galaxy was experiencing one, ready or not. New galactic order. The Great Hall of Reconciliation had never hosted such a diverse gathering in its 5,000-year history. Designed for hegemony's ceremonial functions, its soaring crystal arches and gravity-defying architecture had traditionally welcomed only the highest-ranking representatives of member species. Today, it contained delegations from both the hegemony and the newly formalized Independent Systems Alliance. The contrast was striking, hegemony representatives in their formal regalia and precisely organized seating arrangements facing the more eclectic Alliance delegation with their varied dress and relaxed demeanor. At the center of the Alliance contingent stood Captain Marcus Chen, now bearing the title of Human Diplomatic Liaison. Beside him were representatives from the 27 species that had aligned themselves with humanity, including the towering insectoid Vargans, the crystalline Tellarites, and the shadow-dwelling Crier. High Commander Zirex, recently promoted to the rank of ambassador, stood at an intentionally neutral position between the two groups. The past 6 standard months had been the most challenging of his long career, filled with tense negotiations, mutual suspicion, and several near-disastrous military confrontations. Yet they had arrived at this moment, the formal signing of the Galactic Concordat, a revolutionary new framework for interspecies relations that would fundamentally reshape civilization across known space. High Counselor Vrax approached the central dais, his ancient form moving with ceremonial slowness. The chamber quieted as he took his position. For 10,000 years, Vrax began, his voice amplified throughout the hall, the Galactic Hegemony has maintained order and stability across this quadrant. Our hierarchical structure, based on technological advancement and civilization longevity, has preserved peace and guided developing species toward enlightenment. He paused, surveying the assembled delegates. Yet all systems must evolve or face extinction. The emergence of humanity and the formation of the Independent Systems Alliance has revealed both strengths and weaknesses in our approach. Murmurs rippled through the hegemony delegation. Such an admission from the High Counselor was unprecedented. The Concordat we signed today, Vrax continued, represents not capitulation as some have claimed, but adaptation, the very principle that has ensured our survival for millennia. It establishes a new galactic order based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control, collaborative innovation rather than regulated development. Chen stepped forward to join Vrax at the dais, a symbolic gesture of equality that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Humanity entered the galactic stage through unconventional means, Chen acknowledged, addressing both delegations. We observed, we learned, and yes, we prepared for potential conflict, but our ultimate goal was never domination, it was recognition. Not just for ourselves, but for all species whose potential has been limited by artificial constraints. He gestured toward the Alliance delegation. Each of our member species brings unique perspectives, abilities, and innovations. Together, with the hegemony's vast experience and infrastructure, we believe we can build something greater than either of our organizations could achieve alone. Ambassador Zirex watched the reactions from both delegations. The hegemony representatives remained formal and reserved, though he noted several nodding in cautious agreement. The Alliance delegation was more openly enthusiastic, with some members actually applauding, a human custom that had spread among their allies. An attendant brought forward the Concordat, an actual physical document inscribed on molecularly stabilized crystal, as per ancient hegemony tradition. In an age of quantum data transfer, such physical agreements were purely ceremonial, but symbols mattered in moments of historical significance. Vrax and Chen each placed their hand or equivalent appendage on the document's surface, activating the embedded authentication protocols. The crystal glowed briefly, recognizing their biological signatures. With this act, Vrax announced the Galactic Hegemony and the Independent Systems Alliance formally established the United Galactic Concord, a new framework for cooperation, development, and mutual defense. As the assembled delegations rose in acknowledgement, Zirex found himself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had led to this moment. He sought out Dr. Ilara Venn, the Hegemony's chief xenanthropologist who had been instrumental in helping the Council understand human psychology. "Your assessment was correct," he told her quietly as the ceremony continued. "The humans never wanted war. They simply refused to accept a subordinate position." Ilara nodded, her sensory tendrils pulsing thoughtfully. "Their psychology is fascinating. They simultaneously value individuality and collective achievement, competition and cooperation, tradition and innovation. Contradictions that would tear most societies apart somehow strengthen theirs." "Do you believe this concord will truly function as intended?" Zirex asked. "Or are we merely delaying an inevitable conflict?" "That depends," she replied, "on whether both sides can overcome their fundamental biases. The hegemony must abandon its assumption of inherent superiority based on longevity. The humans must temper their tendency toward rapid, disruptive change with respect for stability." After the formal ceremony concluded, the Great Hall transformed for the diplomatic reception, another human tradition adopted for the occasion. Rather than the rigidly structured interactions typical of hegemony functions, delegates mingled freely, forming conversation groups that crossed traditional boundaries. Zirex found himself approached by Captain Chen, who carried 2 drinking vessels. "A toast, Ambassador," Chen offered, extending one of the vessels. "To unlikely allies." Zirex accepted the gesture, having learned the significance of such rituals to humans. "To new beginnings," he responded. After they had completed the ritual consumption, Chen gestured toward the mingling delegates. 6 months ago, most hegemony species wouldn't acknowledge my existence. Now they're discussing cultural exchange programs and joint research initiatives." "Remarkable progress," Zirex agreed, "though significant challenges remain. Several of the hegemony worlds have expressed intention to withdraw rather than accept the new arrangement." Chen shrugged, a human gesture Zirex had come to recognize as indicating acceptance of uncontrollable factors. "Change never comes without resistance. We expected that." "Your confidence continues to surprise me," Zirex admitted. "From the beginning, you've operated as though success was inevitable, despite overwhelming odds." "It's a human characteristic," Chen explained. "We call it audacity, the willingness to attempt the seemingly impossible. Throughout our history, our greatest achievements have come when someone decided to ignore conventional limitations." Zirex considered this. "The hegemony values certainty and careful calculation. We advance incrementally, minimizing risk." "Which has its advantages," Chen acknowledged. "Your civilization has survived for millennia. Ours has nearly destroyed itself multiple times. Perhaps together we can find a balance, your stability with our dynamism." Before Zirex could respond, an aide approached, requesting Chen's presence for another diplomatic formality. As the human departed, Zirex found himself approached by High Counselor Vrax. "You appear contemplative, Ambassador," the ancient Tarlaxian observed. "I was reflecting on transformation, High Counselor. Not just of galactic politics, but of perspective. When I first encountered the Vanguard, I saw humans as aggressive upstarts threatening hegemony stability. Now I see them as potentially our greatest catalysts for renewal." Vrax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, a sentiment not universally shared. Many on the Council still view this concordat as a temporary accommodation, a strategic retreat until hegemony's strength can be reasserted. "With respect, High Counselor, such thinking represents exactly the stagnation that left us vulnerable to human emergence in the first place. If we cannot truly embrace change, we merely postpone our obsolescence." Vrax studied him for a long moment. "You have been profoundly influenced by your interactions with these humans." "I have been educated," Zirex corrected gently, echoing his words from their earlier conversation. "As has the galaxy. The humans have a concept they call disruption, the sudden reordering of established systems through unexpected innovation. They disrupted our galactic order, certainly, but perhaps that disruption was necessary, even beneficial. Time will determine that," Vrax said, his ancient eyes reflecting the wisdom of millennia. "I may not live to see the ultimate outcome of this transformation, but you likely will. Remember this moment, Zirex. Remember that great changes often come from unexpected sources." As the reception continued around them, Zirex observed the delegates from vastly different species engaged in animated conversation. sharing ideas, debating concepts, finding common ground despite physiological and philosophical differences. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic society for 10,000 years were visibly dissolving, replaced by something more chaotic, but potentially more vital. He recalled something Captain Chen had told him during one of the early negotiations. The most stable structures aren't rigid, they're resilient. They bend without breaking, adapt without losing their essential nature. The hegemony had been rigid for too long. Perhaps this human disruption, uncomfortable as it was, offered the flexibility needed for continued survival in a changing galaxy. Later, as the diplomatic function wound down, Zirex found himself on an observation platform overlooking the capital city. The metropolis stretched to the horizon, its ancient architecture illuminated against the night. 10,000 years of hegemony civilization made manifest in spires and domes and gravity-defying structures. Chen joined him at the railing. "Impressive view," the human commented. "Your people have built something truly magnificent." "Built, yes," Zirex agreed. "But perhaps we stopped building too soon, became too satisfied with what we had achieved, too reluctant to risk change." "That's the great paradox of civilization," Chen observed. "Success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds vulnerability. It happened repeatedly throughout human history. Great empires collapsing not because they were conquered, but because they couldn't adapt. And humanity? Will you avoid this fate?" Chen laughed softly. "Probably not. We're already seeing signs of it among our oldest colonies. That's the cycle of civilization: rise, stagnation, disruption, renewal. The key isn't to break the cycle, but to recognize where you are within it." They stood in companionable silence, watching distant ships rising from the spaceport, representatives departing to their homeworlds carrying news of the new galactic order. "What comes next?" Zirex finally asked. "Exploration," Chen replied without hesitation. "There's a vast universe beyond the boundaries of both hegemony and alliance space. For millennia, your people have focused on consolidation rather than discovery. With our combined expertise and resources, imagine what we might find." "You believe there are other advanced civilizations beyond our known regions?" Zirex asked. Chen smiled. "I'd be more surprised if there weren't. The galaxy is too vast, too full of possibilities to think we're alone at this level of development. Besides," he added with a characteristically human grin, "I'm curious what they'll make of our unlikely partnership." As they stood watching the ships depart, Zirex realized that humanity's most significant contribution to galactic civilization might not be their technology or their tactics, but something far more fundamental. Their insatiable curiosity, their refusal to accept limitations, their constant drive to see what lay beyond the next horizon. For 10,000 years, hegemony had prioritized order over discovery, stability over possibility. Now they were being pulled into a new era, not through conquest or coercion, but through the irresistible human impulse to ask, "What if?" "It will not be an easy transition," Zirex observed. "Millennia of hierarchical thinking cannot be undone in a day or even a century." "Nothing worthwhile ever is easy," Chen replied. "But we've taken the first step. That's what humans have always been good at, taking first steps into the unknown even when we can't see the entire path ahead." As the final delegates departed and the twin moons of Tarlex Prime rose over the ancient city, Zirex contemplated the profound shift in his understanding of the cosmos. The universe was not an orderly progression to be carefully managed, as the hegemony had believed for eons. It was a chaotic, unpredictable tapestry of possibilities, much like the humans themselves. Perhaps that was why they had succeeded where others had failed. In a universe defined by uncertainty, their comfort with the unknown had become their greatest strength. "To the future," Chen said, raising his glass in another human toast. "To the future," Zirex echoed, raising his own. "Unknown, unpredictable, and infinitely more interesting than the past." Epilogue. 1 year later. The observation deck of the UGC Horizon, the first joint Hegemony Alliance exploration vessel, offered an unparalleled view of the phenomenon. Outside the reinforced viewport, space itself seemed to fold and ripple, colors that had no name in any known language dancing across the distortion. Ambassador Zirex stood beside Captain Chen, both of them silent as they absorbed the implications of their discovery. Behind them, a team of scientists, human, Tarlaxian, Varaxian, Cryer, and a dozen other species, worked frantically at their instruments, recording data that would rewrite fundamental understanding of spatial physics. "Is it what I think it is?" Zirex finally asked. Chen nodded, his expression a mixture of awe and excitement. "A naturally occurring transdimensional gateway. The readings match the theoretical models exactly. It's beautiful." "And potentially dangerous," Zirex noted, ever the cautious hegemony officer despite his transformation over the past year. "Potentially transformative," Chen countered. "Think of it. Instantaneous travel between distant points in the galaxy, perhaps even beyond." This makes our current FTL technology look primitive by comparison. If we can understand it, Zirex cautioned, if we can control it. Shen laughed. That's why we're here, isn't it? To understand what seems impossible. To attempt what seems unattainable. He gestured toward the phenomenon. 1 year ago, our civilizations were preparing for possible war. Now we're standing together at the threshold of the greatest discovery in galactic history. Zirex had to acknowledge the truth in Chen's words. The Concordat had faced numerous challenges during its first year. Diplomatic tensions, cultural misunderstandings, even isolated military confrontations with hegemony's separatist factions. Yet it had endured, strengthened by each crisis overcome. And now this discovery, a phenomenon that neither civilization would likely have found alone. The hegemony would have avoided the region due to its spatial instabilities. The Alliance lacked the sophisticated long-range sensors needed to detect the gateway's unique signature. We should inform the Concord Council immediately, Zirex said, already calculating the diplomatic and scientific implications. Agreed, Chen replied. But first, he gestured toward the science team, where a human and Tarlaxian researcher were excitedly comparing notes, their differences forgotten in the thrill of discovery. Take a moment to appreciate what we've accomplished. Not just finding this gateway, but creating the conditions that made its discovery possible. Zirex understood. The unprecedented cooperation between formerly isolated species had generated new perspectives, new methodologies, new possibilities. The gateway before them was remarkable, certainly, but perhaps the true miracle was the ship itself and the diverse crew that called it home. I believe the humans have a saying, Zirex offered. Something about journeys and destinations? Chen smiled appreciatively. The journey is more important than the destination. Indeed, Zirex agreed, watching as more crew members gathered at the viewport, their expressions of wonder transcending species differences, though in this case both appear to be quite extraordinary. As the horizon maintained its position at a safe distance from the gateway, Zirex reflected that perhaps this was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their technology or their military prowess, but their capacity for hope, their unshakable belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that limitations existed to be overcome, that the universe's greatest wonders remained undiscovered. It was a perspective the ancient, established civilizations of the hegemony had nearly forgotten. Now, rejuvenated by human audacity, they faced the future not with trepidation, but with something approaching excitement. What do you think lies beyond? Chen asked, nodding toward the gateway. I have no idea, Zirex admitted. And for the first time in my very long life, I find that uncertainty exhilarating rather than concerning. Chen clapped him on the shoulder, a human gesture of camaraderie that Zirex had come to appreciate. Welcome to the human condition, Ambassador. We've been embracing that feeling since we first looked up at the stars. As the horizon's sensors continued mapping the phenomenon, Zirex silently acknowledged the profound truth in Chen's words. The galaxy had changed irrevocably, not because humans had conquered it, but because they had reminded its ancient civilizations how to wonder, how to dream, how to imagine possibilities beyond the boundaries of established knowledge. They had come prepared for war, but had delivered something far more powerful. A future limited only by imagination, a cosmos waiting to be explored by civilizations united not by hierarchy, but by shared curiosity. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.